Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Torres. I'm a program manager on the SharePoint Experiences team, and my current areas of ownership kind of go in through SharePoint IA, what we think about your internet architecture with hubs. I'm also responsible for site designs, and I also own some other experiences like site creation and what we kind of consider the site's Chrome. So very excited to talk to you guys. Today, I'll be delving deep into what's new from SharePoint hubs, as well as some of the site designs stuff. A lot of what I'm going to be covered actually got announced last week at Ignite. So if you guys were there, you should, this will sound familiar, although I'm excited for some conversation and I can go into a little bit more details than what I could have at Ignite. So excited to share with all of you. So I start first with SharePoint hubs. By now I assume most people know what they are, but just in case, it's always good to level set. So SharePoint hubs is how we organize your intranet, how we recommend you organize your intranet. It gives you the capability of organizing sites together, related sites together, either which way you want, whether it's by department or business unit or division or location, subsidiary. It's really flexible. So for whatever works best for your organization, because we see it spread the gamut, it's basically a tool that lets you do that. And then once you bring these related sites together, and by the way, it works on team sites and it works on communication sites. And I get this question asked a lot. You can also join classic sites to hubs as well, but you just don't get all of the benefits of them. And I can talk about that more in detail. But the high level concept is it's about bringing sites together. And when you do, you get kind of all the features you see listed here. You get from roll up of news and events and site activity, which we're very excited about, to search across related sites. If you think about it, search historically either spans your entire SharePoint or your specific site. Right now, we're excited that with hubs, it searches across only that set of sites that are attached to a hub. It enables cross-site navigations with top customer ask, and we announced last week that we will be supporting audience targeting, and I'll show you in a little bit how you set that up. A consistent look and feel with theming coming across all the sites, so they really feel like part of a family. Common IA with site designs, and I'll talk about that a little bit better. And again, announced at Ignite, we're doing some permissions, making it easier for hub owners to manage permissions across the hub, and I'll be demoing it, as well as hub analytics. You can also create sites from hubs, so if you want to empower your site users to be able to create new sites and automatically put them in the right place, in the right organization, you can point to them to have them create it through hubs. And we are in the middle of shipping, which I'm very excited about. I think it now rolled out to 10% of prod, hub join approvals. And so if you want to control, you can not only scope hubs, so only a select set of people that you pick can join a hub, but now you can also set up an approval process using Flow so that you can even provide more finer control over what sites get attached to the hub. Which I think is pretty cool. And as always, we've always said it, hubs are created by SharePoint administrators or global administrators. That's a very intentional decision that we made to make sure that, really SharePoint administrators are in the right frame of mind to think about how they want to organize their intranet all up. And so we continue to provide that, but site owners are the ones that adopt by joining sites to hub or creating sites directly from the hub. And I'm sure that you've probably heard, we also talked about associated hubs, which is this ability to organize hubs together. And I'll be talking about that. So breaking into the specific net new stuff that we announced at Ignite that I kind of want to give you guys a cool demo of all the stuff that we have, it kind of breaks down into 4 things. I have 3 of them listed here. But one of the things that we're adding, which I think I heard from a lot of customers that was something that was really missing from current hubs is this idea of centralizing permissions. Now, this one of the things I want to state about this is that when we initially rolled out hubs, we actually celebrate, and still do, by the way, the individuality of each site having its own permissions. So it's actually a great model, and we're keeping that completely in place. And so there are many hubs where you do not need the need to centralize permissions, and that is totally fine and totally works. This is more for this particular feature is targeted for more these scenarios where, and I'll give you an example. Within our organization, we have an E+D, or experience devices organization, and their hub is made up of multiple communication sites stitched together for a variety of reasons. And so this helps more of those scenarios where you kind of want to have consistent permissions across all of them, but you still want separate sites. So it really helps that. So what it'll do, it'll grant visitor access. Hub owners can enable it. It'll be not on by default, so it's something that you'll have to opt in into. And site owners can at any time opt in and out. But instead of me talking about it, how about I show it? So let's jump into a cool demo here. So here I am in the Sales Hub. Should be familiar for those of you who are watching or at Ignite. And the way this will work is just when you go to site permissions, you'll now have this new pivot here called Hub. So this site, and this is cool now where I get to go into detail about how this works. So this site will contain the permissions for this particular site. And those are separated from the permissions of the hub. And so these are the permissions on the site. And when you switch over to the hub, you basically enable this feature to sync it down to the associated sites, as you see them with this toggle. And then here's where you put in the groups that you want to do that with. So in this case, I put sales, and we'll support security groups and modern groups as the entities you can kind of push down. Now you'll notice, like I mentioned, that initially when we released this feature, we're only going to support visitors. I'm already gotten asks to support owners in particular, this idea of a hub owner that is an owner on all the associated sites. And that's definitely something that we're considering. But initially, we're going to start with visitors when we initially roll out. So really quickly here, you kind of set this up, turn on the toggle, and then set the groups, and you have this people peeker. You can always remove if you need to, and it'll automatically save. And so what that does is when I switch over to this a site that I'm ready to join to the hub, and I click here, site information, pick sales, there it is. You immediately see that I get this option to sync hub permissions to the site. I can opt out if if this is a top secret project, or if I really want to keep control over who has permission on my site and I don't want to get anything from the hub, I can totally opt out. This is our promise to make it easy for people to retain their own kind of site permissions. But if I actually want to share this with the rest of my organization and make it easier to find in search and roll-ups and all that good stuff, right? Because that's part of the reason we're trying to help here, make sure that when you join your site to the hub, you make that decision to have your stuff roll up to at the hub level, from whether it's news to highlighted content to events to the site itself, and also available in search results. So I'm going to go ahead and click on save. And then immediately you'll now notice you get the hub nav, the theming. This was already green, but you get the hub nav, and then you get the site design applying, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But if I go open here, site permissions, same place as before, because we kind of are adding this to the current site permissions UI. You see these are the permissions on the site, which in this case, it's only one person, because Megan, who was building the site, which is me. But if I click on hub, now I see that both I'm syncing from the hub, and I'm getting, the marketing group is coming down at me. So again, making it super easy for me to joining a site to a hub, get down the permissions, and I don't have to manage them. Just as easily as I joined, I can leave. And so what that means is I can turn this off at any time, and it'll stop and it'll clean up those permissions. So if you, choose to share and take it back for whatever reason, or decide that the site's turning to be something more private and you no longer feel comfortable sharing it with the rest of the hub, it's really easy for you to turn it off. And at that point, you can continue to manage your permissions at the site level and not with the hub. Another question that I got was, let me go back and join this. What happens if you see, and it's back there. What happens if you leave the hub? Do the permissions get cleaned up? So here's the site, and I just wanted to show that this one's also, I believe, syncing permissions. Yeah. Oh, and you'll notice that this is showing sales. So the way that this mechanism will work is very similar to how theming comes down and how nav nodes come down. So for those of you who've been using hubs, you probably noticed that there is or are familiar with the fact that when you make a change at the hub, it takes a couple of hours for it to reflect everywhere. And that'll be true of this as well. We do it a little bit more aggressively than we do for theming and we do for nav because of the urgency that it is something like permissions. But within a couple of hours, and I'm talking about 2 hours, and by the way, we're still kind of testing that, the permissions should be reflected. So then I would go here and see that sales would no longer show up. So going back to the question, what happens when you leave the hub? So here's a site that's joined to the hub, and like I was showing, it's sharing permissions from the hub. So it's showing these two. And then I can easily go to site information. Come on. Choose to none, choose to leave the hub at that point. And we take that unjoin action as a signal, basically, to clean up after ourselves. And so in that moment, when you go back to site permissions, now that pivot is gone. And so we take that action of you unjoining to go out and remove those groups that had previously been added because it was connected to the hub. So that's, in essence, how hub permissions will work. So again, really trying to make it easy for hub owners to help site owners get permissions consistently across any number. We're starting first with visitors. It's an opt-in model, so people can opt in or opt out as needed. Really much adapting to the previous model for hubs, where site owners can choose to join and unjoin. So we're following the footsteps from there. So yeah.
If you don't mind, actually, Melissa, can we take a few questions at this point?
Absolutely.
So just in case,
Absolutely.
do it in sequence. So there was Chris Kent was asking, so the permission syncing implied that there's a job keeping individual SP group memberships the same. You actually mentioned that question as well. So there is a delay on getting the memberships replicated, right?
Correct.
And then Bu Cameron said that could we actually add an REST API to force the sync, which is an interesting idea.
Yes, that's a great question. So right now, the only thing that forces the sync is like the act of joining and unjoining. So if you really wanted to fetch the latest, you can or either join or unjoin to the hub, or turn the toggle on or off to force the sync. But yeah, that's a separate API or control for that. That's something I can follow up on that one.
Cool. Then there was a question, is there an interface to see which site associated to a hub have opted in/out for the sync permissions? That's an interesting thing as well from a visibility perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. As of right now, we don't have that. We are talking about, how can you look up the list of associated sites and see what, which ones are syncing to hubs and which ones the permissions are not. When we initially release, we probably won't have that, but definitely an improvement we can do. I was just talking yesterday to the admin center folks about how we would we want to surface some of this goodness up in the admin center, where you already in the admin UI, you can actually filter your sites by a hub and see all the sites that are joined to the hub. Would this be a property that would show up there? So those are the things we're starting to think about, but initially on release, we won't have that capability.
Yeah, and then there was just related on the option of disabling the sync, and there was a good comment actually from Oliver Sizer and from Monday Coffee related on could we add a support for disabling the theme sync as well? So in certain scenarios that might be useful, but good feedback for you at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Theme sync, totally valid ask. I've gotten that multiple times. It's a little bit more complicated than we would like because when we think about it, and just probably giving you more information that you guys are asking for, but I'll share it anyway. We've been talking about this idea that if we disable the theme, at least the hub navigation at the top should retain the theme from the hub to ensure that it's still part of the family. But that is a little bit of a more work that we would like. So we're just not there yet. And so it's definitely something that's in the backlog, but not something that we're working or looking to work on relatively soon.
Cool. And then there was actually a really good question from Stefan. Actually, I answered that, but then I realized that actually I answered that from slightly in the wrong way, because the Stefan had a question of will the permissions synced only to group connected site or communication sites too? Because group associated team sites only have a support for a certain set of groups. And then communication sites have an unlimited support of permissions. So is there any limitations related on permission syncing? Just to confirm.
Yeah, great question. So I would say this is solely on the SharePoint side of permissions that we are doing this on. So if you're using, you can use a modern group at the hub to push down permissions, but it's not like if your associated site is a team site, as an example, that's group connected, we're not adding those people to that modern group. It's completely separate. We're just adding them. We're just granting permissions to the site container, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So it works, but at the end of the day, it works across both site types. So it works on comm sites and it works on team sites. With team sites, it's that caveat that doing this will not grant access to the group resources. It is just granting access to the site itself.
Good. I think we need to move on. There's a active discussion in the chat, but I don't want to steal all of your time on a Q&A because I think there's a lot of people who want to see even more.
Okay, cool. So that's Hub Permissions, and very excited. And please share with me, Vesa, at the end, if you could copy paste the chat window so I can read through people's feedback and comments. That'd be super helpful for me.
Absolutely.
Cool. So next up is Hub Analytics. Now, sadly, I'm sad to report that unbeknownst to me, they had to pull it back from the demo tenant, so it's not available here anymore, even though it was available last Thursday. So I don't have a demo of it for you, so I apologize for that. But I can talk about what it's going to do and what it will look like. So basically, Hub Analytics was born out of customer ask for, well, I have this site usage information, which is great for me, gives me unique users, and views on a site. But I'd love to get more understanding around, I actually manage my hub. I actually manage my department sites or my regional sites, and I need to get an understanding of how all my sites are doing. And so Hub Analytics was born out of meeting that need. And so what it'll let you do is at the hub level, you will get what we call an aggregated view of who of counts around viewers, counts on visits. And so that way you're not only looking at one site, you'll have a switcher here. So you'll be able to still switch, which is important, between your hub site and the rest of your hub. So that way you'll still retain your hub site details. So if you only care about what, the traffic or details of what's happening on your hub site, that'll still remain intact. But you get this additional capability of seeing not only what's important on the hub site, but what's important across the hub. So it'll contain total viewers as well as total views. And then as you scroll down, it won't have site traffic because that's specific to a current site or popular platforms. But it will have content, like most popular content across your hub. And that'll include things like news, which I think is super cool to be able to see news that's popular across your hub, popular files, and another thing that I'm very passionate about is popular sites. So you'll be able to see, out of all the sites that are joined to the hub, which ones are the most popular, either on viewers or views. So you can take action to say, hey, if you have a culture, let's call it like that, a culture site connected to your hub and there's not a lot of traffic there, maybe now I should promote it, on the hub site homepage raise its prominence, maybe send a news post of it, and raise more of its awareness because people are not finding it or it's not getting enough, traffic as the others are. So it'll really enable you to do, to have that insights into what's happening across your hub. This is where we're starting with. Definitely more things. I would say it's similar to how site usage was born, where we started with very simple graphics and insights, and then we've continued to grow. Like you see here, we've continued to grow with popular platforms and insights on what time your site's being used for. They're also adding for site analytics an ability for you to download into Excel, like the data. So if you want to keep history of it, or actually mind mulge it to meet your needs, you'll have a download option. For Hub Analytics, it won't be there on day one yet, but this, again, I would say it's similar in the journey. It's it's the first step, and then we'll learn from it and get feedback from folks like yourselves, and hopefully grow it some more as time progresses. So sorry I couldn't show it, but hopefully that detailed explanation kind of helps you understand where we're going with it. Cool. Any questions on Hub Analytics?
A quick comment from Mike, which was, does Hub Analytics require synced permissions to collection to see the analytics? So are there any requirements related on the permission side of the house?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So you'll have to have access. Hub, same as Site Analytics, is available only to the owners of the Hub site. Hub Analytics will only be available to those that are site owners on the Hub site. So not everybody will be able to see that view. So that's one thing. And then obviously, same other thing, we will have to. And don't quote me on this because these are the details that we're still kind of figuring out. We'll likely not show you stuff that you don't have permission to, because the hub owner is not an elevated permission role or anything where they get to see more than other people do, and so we're still kind of working out those details.
Cool. It's good to say that don't quote me on this one, but then we're getting the call recorded. But hey.
Totally fair. I can come, once we're a little bit closer, I can come back and be like, hey, remember that call when I said don't quote me on this? Yeah. Quote me on this #official statement.
Cool. I think we're good to go. I'll collect some other questions during the day, and let's see if we're going to get to them on the later part of the demo.
Cool. And then, so the last thing I wanted to highlight before we talk about associated hubs, the last thing I wanted to highlight is just we are very excited for a couple improvements on Crosssite navigation. The first one being a very simple change. So if you have a logo, like you see here in the hub site settings, if you have a logo, and right now you could choose to have a logo or not have a logo, but you always have to have the name. Well, we're giving you this control to be able to hide the name in navigation, and what this will do is this little label here, global sales, will go away, and so you will just be left with a logo, and then you can follow up with the navigation nodes. So it's a very small change, but for a lot, we heard customer feedback that some folks use a logo that's actually the name or the letters of their organization or the department, and so then you'd have a repeat, right, of logo name and then nav nodes. And so for those organizations that have that, you'll have that level of control to be able to hide the name and just keep the logo. So it's very small change, but it's worth and important when it comes to branding. And then the other feature that I wanted to call out, which we talked about last week, is this ability to audience target. And so you see here these nodes being audience targeted. So you'll be able to, when you're editing navigation, there'll be a switch where you'll be able to turn audience targeting for your navigation. And once you do, when you click on any node, you'll have this box showed up that says audience targeting, and you'll be able to add security groups or modern groups into them. And so here's an example of I'm using the New York marketing groups. We will support up to 10. And then you click OK, and you'll be able to save. Now, what's cool about this is that when you're in edit mode as an editor, you see everything. But then once you click save and you cancel, you won't see everything because it'll give you a more realistic view of what you're supposed to see. So let me refresh here. So here you'll see that I'm seeing Seattle events and not New York events because Megan is based off Seattle and not New York. But as an editor, you see it everything, so you can quickly get a layout for your entire navigation, and then actually see what your real user would see in those cases. So very excited. This is one of the top customer request. So it's our starting point in this journey, and so I'm sure you guys are familiar with. There's also audience targeting being rolled out to news and highlight content for content in those web parts. And so this is the next step from that to add it to navigation. And even though I'm highlighting here in the hub navigation because I'm all about hubs, it actually works also on associated sites, and it also works on the site, like the local site nav, as well as the footer on communication sites. Cool.
Excellent. Quick question related on the audience targeting. This is a valid question, but this always comes up. Laurent is asking that, hey, what if we had a lot of audiences? Does it impact the performance?
Yeah. So we due to those concerns with having too many, we're capping you at 10 to keep you safe. So you can't populate more than 10 groups in there. So that's not a limit we will never increase. It's more of a limit as a starting point. So we can measure the perf. We can ensure that this is has good reliability, has good performance, and then make improvements to make sure that's in a good state before we increase it. So that's why we're capping it at 10.
Yeah. And then Urs is asking also, will we get an audience targeting also on upcoming metadata-driven navigation? And the answer is potentially yes. The audience targeting is something which we definitely are looking at to include in general in the product more efficiently. What it will be, how it will look like, all of those details will be defined later. So.
Yes. Yeah. I would say we're starting with the current navigation, what we call, for those of you who know behind the scenes, what we call the quick launch navigation, which is the source for site navigation, and what we call the hub navigation, which behind the scenes is top nav. Yeah.
So we have now 11 minutes before you need to go and drop your kid to the school. So
yeah. So let's keep going. I will. We might have to do another one on site design. Sorry, but
that's absolutely welcome as well. So we can concentrate on the hub side on this one, and then do another one on site designs. More than welcome.
Okay. So I'll try to cover the next two quick enough. If not, more than happy to come back because I don't want folks who joined for just site designs to not get what they were looking for. Okay. So if you can start thinking about your journey, you start, we talked about in previous sessions, I'm sure you've heard about the home site, and now we've just talked about hubs and the improvements we're doing for hubs. But we definitely understand there's a need for hubs to be related to each other. So I'm excited to talk about that. We are giving you that capability with what we call associated hubs. And so in this example, this diagram that I'm showing you, think about, how a sales organization might be pretty big, and it might actually have offices dedicated to that for Asia Pacific and Europe as an example. And they're big enough regions that they have a whole hub for themselves. So in this case, they're part of the bigger sales organization, and so want to be part of the bigger sales hub, but at the same time have totally valid scenarios for having their own hubs. And so what we're allowing you to do is to now establish a connection between these, so it looks more like kind of what you're seeing here. So I do want to be clear about what this means. So similar to how you associate a site to a hub, you'll be able to associate a hub to another hub to bring together related hubs. And once you do that, you'll be able to search across hubs. So as an example, in this example I've been calling out, when you perform a search in sales, it'll include results from the sales APAC and sales Europe, but not only those hub sites, but their actual hubs themselves. So that means things from their associated sites as well. It'll also do roll up of news and activity. So you'll be able to like roll up news from APAC and Europe, not only the hub site, but the hubs themselves. And we make it easier to curate hub to hub navigation. We are not stacking navs. That, you know, you're not getting a nav on the top of a nav on the top of a nav. We already have too many. If you think, consider the Office 365 suite bar at the top, and then you have the hub nav, and then you have the header. We're not adding a fourth layer to that party, but we're making it easier for you to be able to connect these in your current nav model. And the last but not least, it's IT controlled. So similar as IT creates hubs, you'll be able to connect them together. So how it'll work is if I switch over, so here's the Sales Asia Pacific hub that we were just talking about. And if I click on hub site settings, similar how you go to site information to join your site to a hub, you'll have this associated hub field where you'll be able to pick global sales. For purposes of this demo, I already kind of done that for ourselves. So it's already here connected to global sales. And, you know, realistically, at this level, you don't really see a change because we still want you to celebrate the current hub that you're in. But one thing I recommend is, again, just because we're not introducing a new layer of nav, you can easily set up a connection yourself here by, you know, adding a link to sales and going from here to there. So something that you're in total control of. So now you're here, and if I do a search here for ideas, you will see that this is coming from Sydney ambassadors, which is actually from the Asia Pacific. So again, that's that hub to hub. So from this hub, you're already searching information that's in another hub. And if I click here on edit, you can build aggregated views. So clicking here, when you select sites today, in this case, you'll see this little decoration here, it's Asia Pacific, that says hub, but now you'll be able to pick hub and associated sites. And that'll bring this information not only from that hub, but from its associated sites. So giving you more control over how to do roll-ups and what roll-ups should be showing up here. And I'm doing it all in one web part, but you can think about adding multiple web parts or two web parts, one that's like news from this hub, you know, top news, and then here's news from the regions or news from, you know, whatever you kind of want to build, but you can. And that's the cool thing about that. So you have that capability. And when it comes to navigation, like I talked about, so here's me, this is current sales hub navigation. And we're just making it easier so that you can go here, and I have this our teams. I can go here and you'll have this option called associated hubs. And when I click OK, we automatically look at the hubs that were connected to this one and bring that for you. Now, this list is not dynamic. It doesn't get automatically updated, but it just gives you that extra helps. You don't have to go grab those links or know what those relationships are, so that then you can easily add it to your nav. And so, you know, it's really what we're really empowering with this feature, or what we're really focusing on, is about search, discovery, and making it easier to curate your navigation. And that's kind of the goal that we're targeting with this.
Related on that one, there was a good question on, are there limits on the number of hub association layers that can be created?
Ah, interesting.
Everybody's always looking for limits, right?
Yeah. So there is a limit. So hubs today are limited to 2,000. You can't have more than 2,000 hubs, because that's the total limit of hubs. In terms of layers, we are capping it at 3. So what that means is, you know, if I go back to my trusty, slide here, you can only do 3 levels. So you could have one more underneath for Sales APAC. Let's say you had one for Australia, but that would be it. And really the reason beyond that is search. Is why we're capping it at that current level.
Makes sense.
And I've spoken when we started this investigating for this feature. I believe I spoke to some of you about this, and so 3 seemed to be at the time like what would meet the most customer needs, and anything beyond that was starting to go back into the world of probably going too deep.
Makes perfect sense.
Any other questions on this?
No, that's it for the hub side of the house. Now we have 3 minutes. I'm just conscious about the time. School is important, so you need to take care of.
Yeah, so for site scripts and site designs, do you think it's best to cover what I can in 3 minutes, or
I don't think so, actually. I think we need to, let's schedule you on one of the bi-weekly calls, if possible. I'll get that one offline, because I don't think it's worthwhile to go there even for a few minutes, because it's not that beneficial. Now I can actually share my screen, and let's go back on the slides, and let's see if there's any questions. There was a question related on, will hub search include people? Was one of the questions.
Great question. Not right now. It's definitely something that Karem is looking at improvements overall for search, and what that means for hubs. But as of right now, not currently.
Okay. Then there was a kind of I don't know if this is confusing, but there was a comment related on hub site content type syndication to replace classic site content type hub. So how does that relate between each other?
Yes. So great question. So you guys probably heard that Sean Squires talked about that a little bit at Ignite. So they are working on a brand new version of the content type hub stuff, and it's going to be global, but they do have plans to bring it at the scope of the hub. I don't have exact details of the timing for that. But the goal would be similar functionality that you would expect that they announce at the global level, but at the hub level at that point. So you'd set it up at the hub, and now all the associated sites would get it. Today, you could do it through the use of in site designs, but it's not really a sync. It's a one-time job, and so the goal is to make it a little bit more richer than that.
Yep. Makes sense. And now the final question, because I know you're hard limited, and there was there's 2 persons asking around this one or similar topics. So is the home site a hub site, or is it excluded from the levels if you set the home site as a hub site? So is the home site calculated on the levels or not?
That's a great question. So I'll separate it by separating the 2 things for a moment. So a home site is just a site that you mark up and you enable to have a set of features. Now your home site can be a hub, and in many cases that makes sense. Like for example, in Microsoft, our home site is a hub as well, because they have multiple sites that they use to manage the content at the Microsoft level. With that said, you can connect. You could connect to that. So you could do that, but at that point it's a little bit diluted, because search already at the home site is global. So it's already spanning everything. So why would you, right? So I would think a little bit more. You can do it, but I would think a little bit more from an IA perspective, whether it's bang for buck at that point. Because one of the things that setting up the home site feature does is that it turns your search to be global. And so if you want it to be global at that point, then you're not getting that benefit. And by the way, what I showed for bringing up the news rollups, that ability to that I showed bring up Asia Pacific at the sales hub level, it's going to be shipped as part of the associated hubs feature, but it'll be available on any site. So you don't have to be in a hub to take advantage of it, which is one of the cool things about it too. So you could on your home site not make it a hub if you don't have a need, and actually pick sales and pick sales Asia Pacific and pick Europe and do the roll up there if that's kind of what you wanted to do.
Yeah. Cool. I think that sums up this one. Now there was a comment, just multiple comments on, hey, please remember to share the slides. So I'll include the slides on the blog post like we do typically, and I will get the slides from Melissa and I will include them in the presentation which we share. So that should be fine, right, Melissa?
Cool. Yes, I will send it to you right after I get back, and
absolutely.
I'll drop off now. Okay.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, everyone.
I'm just watching if there's any other questions on the chat window, which we haven't answered. Is a home site a hub or its own, or is a flavor of communication site to be hubified? Ralph, on the first question, the home site, any site can be a home site technically. And there's actually even a separate between a home site and a root site. So a home site can be a hub if you want, but it doesn't have to be a hub. So it is basically same as with hub sites, same as with home site. It is a setting related on the site, and it can be technically even a group associated team site. So it doesn't have to be a communication site. So there are attributes. There's no underlying site definition or a template behind of the scenes. When you set these attributes on a site, then they will light up functionalities. And when you disable the attribute, then the light functionalities will go away. Good. Yes, on Ali Robinson's comment, it would be cool when she comes back on the site designs if you can cover some hub governance guidance. I'm being conscious about that one. Let's definitely get Melissa back on the calls, community calls, and we will always release the agenda a few days before, so you'll know when she's back as the time is suitable. Now, and let's have a separate one for site designs and then follow up on the hub as well, because there's clearly a lot of interest on that one.